Nigel, why his mate Bridget Rowe, your ex-press officer, took the name Libertas. Who did something in Europe? Liam in Marlow.
Well, Libertas, and let's see what happens there.
This was Kilroy's Silk Party, wasn't it?
No, that was Veritas.
Oh, that
it's
was
funny.
Veritas,
They all
yes.
seem to have similar names,
Yeah,
don't they? Our concern with Libertas...
Why has she left you?
She hasn't, actually. But
Why has she taken the name?
Because we're a little bit concerned that Libertas would come into this country, masquerade as being a Eurosceptic party, attract Eurosceptic votes, when the true agenda of Libertas is they want a bigger and stronger European Union.
So why did she take their name?
Libertas have shown themselves to be inept. I mean, for example, in Germany, where they intended to run candidates, they won't be running any candidates because they failed to meet the electoral registration criteria. And in Britain, I mean...
Isn't it symptomatic, though, the fact that, Nigel, you have got a lot of internal division in the party at the moment?
No, we haven't got internal division. The Libertas thing, we are concerned that if Mr Ganley comes into this country under the name Libertas and is allowed to be seen to be a Eurosceptic when in reality he's something different, that it might damage the argument in this European election campaign.
Where do you stand on all this furore over MPs' expenses that Hazel Beers was talking about?
Well, very interesting, because, of course, I've lived under the other system for 10 years, John. What Mr Brown wanted to do with his so-called reform of expenses was to Europeanise Westminster by making people sign in for a daily allowance, which incidentally is the system in Brussels and always has been. What happens is you finish up with your members of Parliament or your members of the European Parliament who spend their entire lives inside those buildings, and so the disconnect between politicians and people gets worse. So I'm absolutely opposed to it. There's a lot needs sorting out in Westminster. Clearly, the second home allowance for anybody within 50 miles of London should be abolished. End of.
Going back, though, to the financial difficulties of your party, and there was a financial scandal as well, wasn't there?
Oh, listen.
Let's be open and frank about it. How can we trust you?
Well, because the financial scandal that we've had, you know, we have had some bad apples in UKIP, all right? Just as every political party has had bad apples, every company, every family, for that matter, has the odd bad apple. The question, John, is how do you deal with bad apples? And the way that I've dealt with bad apples is ruthlessly. If people have broken trust with us, I get rid of them. And I think that contrasts with what's happened in the two big parties.
Russell Cox, I'd like to know, apart from getting out of Europe, we're going to go live to Martin Howe in a moment, guys. Don't forget that, outside Westminster, and we'll come back to Nigel if necessary. I'd like to know, apart from getting out of Europe, which I agree with you on, Nigel, and you will have my vote in the Euro elections, what are your other policies, in particular crime? Will you stop this nonsense of prisoners only serving half their sentence? Immigration, can we rely on you to let the good guys in, i.e. the Gurkhas, and the bad people out? Russell Cox.
Yeah. Immigration, we should return to a work permit system, and we should stop immigration for a period of time until we can work out who's actually living in this country. As far as crime's concerned, the one thing that everybody refuses to recognise is there has been a massive increase in the criminal base in this country. There are lots of reasons for it, and what we need is a massive, and I mean massive, prison building programme in this country.
Well, of course, the three Titan jails have been scrapped by Jack Manor.
I know. You know, we keep... I mean, at the moment, John, it's 80,000... And a lot of people who should be going to prison are not going to prison, even repeat offenders.
Nigel, this is from John Kelly in Exmouth. I've not seen nor heard any political figure or newspaper columnist who has seriously queried the cost of British taxpayers of our membership of the EU. I've heard several independent sources, Open Europe, the Bruges Group, Taxpayers Alliance, etc., claim the total cost is around 150 billion per annum. Can this be true, Nigel? And if so, why isn't that cost getting maximum scrutiny in the context of our present dire financial situation?
Well, John, you're right. I mean, the budget was...
It's not from me, that's John Kelly, yes.
Yeah, I mean...
I'm clarifying that for the listener. Go on.
John in Exmouth, not John here. You know, we've just had this simply appalling budget. What fascinates me is that Osborne, who is supposed to be, you know, the Shadow Chancellor, refuses to touch any of the territory that John's just talked about. And that's because... Don't be gulled, folks, by William Hague pretending there might be a referendum. That's because this Conservative Party is wedded and committed to the idea that we're part of a European Union, that we're part of a European single market with all of those added costs. And again, that's the one freedom that we have in a European election. We can debate this stuff.
Where are you with Open Europe and the Bruges Group? I mean, are they working with you?
Oh, listen, I mean, I appear on Bruges Group platforms. I've been a member of the Bruges Group since way before UKIP even existed. You know, we are
Explain
friendly.
to people what the group is, if people don't know
The
what
Bruges
it
Group,
is.
in 88, Margaret Thatcher, having been a devout pro-EU supporter for the whole of her life, had this Damascene conversion. And she gave a speech at Bruges where she said, "I now realise it's not about trade, it's about forging a political state, and we must never allow this to happen to our country." And in honour of that speech, in honour of this conversion, a group was formed called the Bruges Group, in fact formed by a bloke I was at school with, and it was designed to study the whole aspect of it, and it's been very successful.
John, please ask Nigel why his party keeps such a high profile. After all, with no alternative to Labour from the Tories or the Lib Dems, surely UKIP should be promoting themselves much more. Stuart Fox.
Well, we do promote ourselves as actively as we can, but you have to understand that there's a big segment of the media of this country who tend to back the blue rosette or the red rosette, and it's very tribal, and it's because of our first-past-the-post system, and sometimes it's difficult to get heard. But we're beginning to be heard over the last few weeks, and you're going to hear a lot more of us in the next 37 days.
So UKIP believes in PR, does it?
I think, John, the first-past-the-post electoral system that we've got for the House of Commons in Westminster is now morally bankrupt.
So do you believe in PR? Is it a policy? Is it a manifesto policy?
Yeah, we need electoral reform in this country. We need an element of PR in Westminster elections, because right now, if you're a socialist living in Esher, what's the point of going out to vote?
Would you like it to be work out how the European elections work? For example, you get a proportion, don't you?
No, I wouldn't, because I wouldn't for Westminster, because I think the link between the elected member and the constituency is too vague. Funny enough, and I thought I'd never say this, but actually the Germans can teach us something about democracy. How about that?
Okay.
In Germany, when you vote, you have two votes. One for the man or woman to represent the constituency, and the second, you can vote for an opinion. And I quite like that system.
Interesting. It's Nigel Farage, 020-33-647-000. How I agree with UKIP, stop immigration and out of the EU. Nigel, you will get my vote, says Sally in Lincolnshire. Thank you very much indeed. Stephen Jenner says, "Hi Gaunty, hi Nigel. You both bring shame on the BBC with your presence on the Sun's new radio station. Brilliant. Keep it up, and let us all hope that UKIP are not just second to Cameron's Tories, but first on June the 4th, and big enough to be a significant thorn in Cameron's side after May next year. Regards, Stephen Jenner." Thank you very, very much indeed for that. So, when we go to vote, why vote? Because the turnout is always very low. Why should people vote? Not necessarily for you, but at all.
You're falling into this trap, John. Everybody says the turnout at European elections is derisory. Historically, the turnout was derisory. But what happened from 1999 to 2004, there was an increase in turnout of exactly 50%. So we had a turnout in the last Euros of 38%, and we've got general election turnout falling, European election turnout rising, as people realise that it's from Europe where most of the rules by which we live our lives come. So I do not think there'll be a low turnout, and I think the fact that we're in the field means a lot of people who otherwise wouldn't bother to vote will come out and vote.
OK, let's take a call. Bob's in Swindon. Hello, Bob.
Hi.
Hi, you're through to Nigel Farage. What do you want to say?
Right, hi Nigel. What I would like to ask you, obviously being in the southwest, we have a lot of activity from the Lib Dems and a lot of activity from their MEPs. But we're hearing that that the leader of the Lib Dems, Graham Watson, I think his name is, actually wants to be the president of the European Parliament. If that's true, then it rather belies them actually wanting less control rather than more.
Well, the Lib Dems have never been honest, and this is particularly true in the west of England where they're strong. They've never been honest with the people that vote for them. The Lib Dems are fanatically pro-EU. They broke their promise because when they were elected in 2005 to Westminster, they said they'd vote for a referendum on the constitutional treaty. They haven't done so. You're right that Graham Watson, their Southwest MEP, wants to be the President of the European Parliament, but perhaps more significant than that, when Gordon Brown came to visit us a few weeks ago, Graham Watson called for Britain to join the Euro immediately. So if you are thinking of voting Lib Dem, and you don't want Britain to be in the Euro, please, please think again. To find out more about who we are and what we stand for, go to the UK Independence Party website at www.ukip.org.